في تسليم الكتيبة كان الرسول يكرز للآخرين بالعديد من المهارة والطرق التي يمكننا ملاحظتها على وجه التحديد من حيث المهارة التحفيزية. يشير الدافع إلى أن السلوك مدفوعا بالغرائز الطبيعية مثل الحب أو التعلق أو الخوف أو الغضب. يقول البعض أننا مدفوعا بالمكافأة الخارجية للتصرف بطريقة معينة أو بالحاجة إلى تلبية الرغبة الداخلية. لتوضيح الأمر بإيجاز، فإن الاحتياجات والرغبة الإنسانية الأساسية تدفع المرء إلى التصرف والتحفيز والتأثير في السلوكيات والأفعال لتلبية تلك الاحتياجات مثل الجوع أو العطش أو الرغبة في تحقيقها. يمكن أن يكون الدافع شيئا يحدث عندما يشجع الناس أنفسهم على التحرك أو تغيير سلوكهم من أجل حياة أفضل بسبب وضعهم الثابت.
The revelation of the Quran is a source of motivation for every Muslim. The Prophet himself had no knowledge of religion but was guided by God's revelation to expand the teachings of religion. The Prophet became motivated when he was chosen by Allah to be Prophet. The revelation of the Quran first happened to the Prophet Muhammad when he was silent in the cave of Hira. He was approached by Jibril who instructed with the sacred command, read. However, Prophet Muhammad did not know how to read at that time. His weakness of not knowing how to read prevent him from moving forward? Definitely not. This is how the Prophet Muhammad continued his journey as God's church to deliver da'wah. Second, we can see the motivation based on fear in the Prophet. Motivational skill plays an important role when it comes to family relationships. This is because after receiving the revelation in Hira cave, he returned home in a state of fear. After coming down, Prophet Muhammad expressed his concern. He shared difficulties and disadvantages with loved ones. Thus, the Prophet rose again from his fear after receiving advice and guidance from Sayyidatina Khadijah and Waraqah. The Prophet obtained the spirit of preaching from Khadija's cousin, namely Waraqah bin Nawfal, as a supporter. Waraqah states that Jibril also once came to Prophet Musa to appoint him as a messenger. Even Waraqah himself wants to support the Prophet's struggle. He wants to help with the best capacities, but he is just an old man. But with the intention of saying so, the Prophet being motivated when he heard that Waraqah will help him if he is still alive, and encouraged the Prophet to do the preaching strategy in groups. Furthermore, the Prophet received a lot of opposition and obstacles from the Mushrikeen who worship idols and fanatics. But the Prophet was not so easy to break down, even though at that time there were many people who turned away from Allah Almighty, while he was only one with his support who continued his struggle to spread the holy religion of Islam. All the challenges were faced by the Prophet with open heart, patience, and perseverance. And what the Prophet did was to continue preaching from a small group secretly until his preaching was openly revealed. Last but not least, Prophet Muhammad often told of ways to save Muslims from the pressure and harassment of the Quraysh during the process of studying the teachings of Islam. Even though the Quraysh began to openly antagonize the Prophet, nevertheless it became the reason that encouraged the Prophet to continue rising from the threat and torture.
Based on book Sirah, if you go to the land of Hafsa, it has a king who does not oppress anyone, and it is a land of sincerity. The Prophet ﷺ told his companions, if you go out to the land of Hafsa, it has a king who does not oppress anyone, and it is a land of sincerity. This was because Hafsa was the position that his uncle Abu Talib held at the time until God brings you the deliverance from your current situation. And number three, a verification of the Prophet Muhammad SAW assertion that God has faith in the convenience calling power and creating an emotional mood for the Mecca community by sharing the relative sentiments of fondness, generosity, and sunrise for the immigrant children in Hafsa. And number three, a group of Nasrani from the Hafsa community traveled to Mecca to visit the Prophet Muhammad SAW and giving Muslims more political and strategic experience and educating them about the life of other nearby residents. And with the imposition of the Hafsa negus, which turns them over to the Quraysh delegation, this immigration marked the Muslim first triumphs against the Quraysh outside of Mecca. Lesson 6. Number 1. After feeding the two camels he had with him, Abu Bakr may God be pleased with him, took them to their leader, Abdullah Ergits, who practiced the faith of the unbelief and set up a meeting with him after 3 nights. And number two, the two rangers were under the care of Asma binti Abu Bakar. May God be pleased with her. She used to deliver food to them. Lesson 7. Number 1. The bright strengths the Muslim community aggressive mindsets. And the Sirah strengthens the comparative attitude between the Muhajirin and the Ansar, and against the standing of Islam and Muslim among Medina neighbors state. And number 2, unify leadership because the messenger is the Muslim general commander in combat and they follow him with one voice. And in contrast to Quraysh's objective which stood for carelessness, extremism, and ignorance, the Muslim aim were clear: triumph over martyrdom and the supremacy of God's message. And the Muslim had a strong sense of moral because the prophets of God uplift and encourage his followers both before and during battles.
Lesson 8. First, the Jews of Bani Kainuka broke the bond out of treason and treachery, which is incensed the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. Because of this, Muslims were even more enraged and inspired to uphold the dignity of the woman they had degraded. In addition, by killing their Muslim brethren, Muslims also incited a fight between Jews. This demonstrates that they are driven and do not remain mute while evil is taking place. Second, when the Prophet, may God bless him and grant him peace, heard that the Quraysh were getting ready and moving toward Medina, he left Medina after consulting his companions and took 1,000 Muslim soldiers with him. The Prophet of God and other Muslims who still believed in God and His Messenger had resolved to fight with the Quraysh despite the reduction in soldiers brought about by Abdullah bin Abi Salul. This demonstrates how highly motivated Muslims are to fight in battle despite the tragedy of having insufficient fighters. While in Lesson 9, firstly, in Shawwal of the 5th year of migration, the Quraysh and Ghatafan parties and those accompanying them arrived to conquer the city. Therefore, they attacked the city till the Muslim suffering increased. He agreed to the digging of a trench in the north of the city to create a barrier that keeps the invaders and the Muslims apart, prevents the city from being stormed, and gives the Muslims a good defensive posture from which they can fire the invaders with arrows. Despite being under siege, the Muslims were all inspired to resist giving up and even devised a plan of attack. Second, 8 Muslims were martyred as a result of it continuing, including Sa'ad bin Mu'adh. May God be pleased with him. Even though the Muslims were in difficulty, they consistently fought the Quraysh in succession and persisted by pleading with God to annihilate their adversaries. Here, we may observe a Muslim high level of motivation in the face of extreme suspicions. Lesson 10. First, Allah knows what you do not know and He gives before the near victory. We don't need your food, so please leave us, they say. We can see how much our Prophet cares for his followers by his willingness to feed those he does not personally know. Such actions serve as an example and inspiration for others to follow in his footsteps. Second, even though the Prophet was unable to do Umrah this year, he persisted until he was able to do so the next year. This demonstrates the Prophet's intense desire and passion for the performing Umrah. Third, the strength of the Islamic State soldiers is also demonstrated by the fact that the Prophet, may God grant him peace and blessings, performed the Umrah of Judgment. As a result, the Prophet, may God grant him peace and blessing, dressed the soldiers in distinct and unique garb that highlighted their physical powers. As a result, Muslims are more determined since their power can make their foes tremble in fright. Number 4. The Muslims chose Khalid bin al-Walid, may God be pleased with him, as their leader after the two armies met in Mu'tah. He rebuilt the army, replacing the left with the right, and made a segment of the army advance from the rear as if they were new supplies. The Muslims continued to fight and chose a new commander while engaged in combat with the enemy despite losing their original leader during the conflict. Number 5. In order to surprise the Quraysh and render them powerless to fight, the messenger, may God praise and peace be with him, gave the order to his companions to get ready for the invasion while keeping his whereabouts a secret. In order to surprise the Quraysh and render them powerless to fight, the messenger, may God's praise and peace be with him, gave the order to his companions to get ready for the invasion while keeping his whereabouts secret.
The lesson 11 is about the passage found in this book of Sirah, shows that Allah conveyed revelations to His Majesty about Hajj, which means farewell, in detail, and then His Majesty was required to convey and advocate to his people in his farewell sermon. According to the story in book Sirah, listen to and obey the rules of the Muslim community regardless of their race or skin color. In this topic have explanation about the racism, about skin color or race. Based on the storyline, there is understood even though the Prophet fell ill, but the Prophet still remember his people about the congregational prayer, and then the Prophet ordered Abu Bakr to lead the congregational prayer with the other people. Next, the lesson 12 about the Prophet, may God's prayers and peace be upon him, made each of his wives a caller to Islam and a worker of the teachings of Islam in her daily life, building leisure and leisure rulings to answer the response of the questioners. Second, Anas bin Malik, may God be pleased with him, said the messenger of God was the best of people and he was the bravest of people.
كان النبي محمد قادرا على إدارته جيدا. جلالة الملك حكيم أيضا في إدارة العواطف عندما يواجه خصما. في سياق مواجهة العدو لم يكن من السهل التعاطف مع النبي محمد، وكان حكيما في وضع الاستراتيجيات والتعامل مع المواقف الصعبة من خلال التحكم في المشاعر. هذا نوع من الدافع الذي يلهم نفسه للسيطرة بشكل فعال على سيرورة حياته، خاصة عند الكرازة. يجير العالم من خلال تعديل المعتقدات والسلوكيات والعادات والأعراف الاجتماعية من خلال اللطف، ولكن اللطيف لا يجبر الآخرين على الاتفاق معه.